think there's two types of changes. One is the change happens to you, right? And one is the change that you design. And both have some common norms that I was talking earlier, right? Like of being lost, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. But I think it is very important then to understand what is the playbook, whether the change happened to you or you're deciding to make a change.
Hello and welcome to Here's the Deal, the go-to podcast for leaders looking to craft purposeful lives and reach their highest potential. Each episode, we give you the deal on complex topics that leaders face at the intersection of culture, business, and technology. Our goal is to help you shape a meaningful career and lead a purposeful life, not only for yourselves, but also for the people that you lead. I'm Shujaat Ahmed. Today, we're discussing a very critical topic: navigating career transitions. We're going to cover insights and strategies from transitions we've led for ourselves and also helped others run it. Right? Part one, we're going to talk about transitions and the playbook for embracing transition. And part two, we're going to talk about how do you design the transitions yourself. I'm joined by my co-host, Joselle Decampo Gotham. Joselle is a trained economist. She got her start on Wall Street, spent her career in management consulting, advising Fortune 100 leaders on mergers and acquisition strategy and digital transformation. She then made the leap into tech and led a product engineering team for a multi-billion-dollar business. She is also the founder of OnPoint, a leadership advisory firm where she helps aspiring leaders achieve their full potential. As for me, I'm a strategist, leader, and change broker in the AI and future work, people analytics, and culture change space. I'm focused on the tech sector, driving culture change for business and societal outcomes. Before tech, I've lived multiple lives through multiple industries: CPG, retail, management consulting, and now at tech. I'm now the founder of Belong and Lead.
Thank you for that, Shujat. So let's get straight to it. So tell me, what's the deal with transitions and specifically in the realm of navigating career and professional transitions? So let's start with that. What's the state of career transitions?
Yeah, well, it's interesting timing. We've had the jobs report come out in the US just last night and some interesting data points from there. We saw that the unemployment related to permanent layoffs, right, has remained steady throughout the year. So there's change happening to people, to them. And so there is this concept of people going through a transition in career because of something happened to them in their business. Anecdotally, our audiences for this podcast, this was the most hottest topic that they asked for and wanted us to cover. So it is top of mind, it's relevant. And I think between you and I in our own networks, we've seen every other leadership roundtable we've gone to, every other conference we've gone to, that leaders are going through transition and a lot of them are doing it themselves, right? They want to design life to be more meaningful. So I think in this state currently, we are seeing there's already people going through this change of wanting to make a change for themselves for a different life. And at the same time, in the economy, we're seeing change happen to people, right, from companies in the form of layoffs. That's why this is a hot topic, relevant, and I think key for where we're headed.
Indeed. And as you know, I love the economic backdrop of what we're discussing today. And I think what I'm hearing you say is lots of change just from a kind of macro view, economics wise, and also from our own personal networks that we're observing as well. And I think a key takeaway that I'm hearing from you is it's almost this myth of transitions where things might happen to you versus you make that change happen. What I'm hearing from you is we're also observing that many of the changes are, particularly on the career front, people are intentionally making a change to build meaningful and purposeful lives, which I think is wonderful, and also just kind of touches on our vision and mission for why you and I, do this podcast. So thank you for that introduction. I'd love to, when I think about the audience, and as you were sharing, this is like a hot topic for our audience. So I'd love to share personal stories around transition. You mentioned that you live multiple lives. So maybe start a little bit with that and pick a poignant, maybe point in time that was important for you and take us through what happened in some of your key transitional moments.
Yeah, when I started my work life, it was similar to like the Apollo 13 landing back to Earth, highly turbulent, did not know what is this? Is this what existence for humans was supposed to be? This politics, a 8 to 4 very high paying job. I was in oil and gas. It was like the tech of its time. But I was like, but what am I doing? What am I delivering? Like, what's happening? Meetings, and then what are we producing? And so it was like an existential shock right off from the gate. But again, early in your career, this is your doorway you open to the world of work. And you don't know, is work like this everywhere? So at that time, Hurricane Katrina had happened, and I had seen how the impact of supply chain in delivering solutions, in delivering relief, in delivering business results, and I got attracted to it. And my natural thought was that maybe this will help me be at the center and try to design some solutions to help people. So I shifted from oil and gas, started doing supply chain with Procter and Gamble at that time globally. And then from there, I, came back to North America, and I, kept building my portfolio and supply chain. I did not want to just go climb up a ladder because everyone wanted to just, one up each other and get promoted. I felt like I wanted to understand what is the wall that the ladder is leaning on to be more important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to learn. I went from manufacturing to logistics to distribution on the retail side. And great, built great skill sets, but I felt something was missing, and I felt I wanted to have more autonomy in using my intellectual curiosity. That's where I ended up being in consulting without having a B school degree, and I ended up being in strategy consulting. So all of these transitions were me early in my career figuring out what is keeping me excited. I have some sense of purpose, and for that purpose, what could help me from a skill set perspective? And I shifted jobs and roles to build that skill set deeply. Forward in my mid career, after I was established as a strategy consultant, I'd been there for almost 7 years. I think later in my life, I did a more intentional transition where I said, okay, I've gathered massive skill sets, I've built credibility, I've been an established advisor to leaders. But what is my purpose? What do I want to go? Who do I want to be? And what are elements from what I've already earned help me thrive in what I want to drive at purpose? So that's where I did a long strategy, took myself into a transitional state, and shifted from strategy consulting towards the talent domain. And then after having spent 7 years in the talent domain, I'm now going through another transition where I'm going away from corporate life and going on my own to build a business for the kind of purpose and impact I want to create.
That's fascinating. I love that story. And what I am hearing from you is the transition doesn't occur only once. It occurs many times.
Absolutely, right? I'm a big believer of the hero's journey. So the Joseph Campbell concept, because I see it in different religions and scriptures as well, that it is a curvy journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know, like Steve Jobs said famously at his Stanford commencement speech, right? You can only connect the dots, in hindsight, going backwards.
Right.
But at that moment, it is number one, not linear. We will be in through multiple transitions in life. And it is such an important topic because a lot of people who get transition wrong is because they do not listen to the signals that come in multiple times in life that tells them, you know what, your mind and heart are not connected. You need to make a shift. There's an inner voice. And a lot of the times we suppress that voice, and over, research and looking at, the famous transitions book that you and I love, which is, again, I have it here, which was really helpful for me and continues to be helpful. This talks about that for people who struggle the most in designing meaningful careers are the ones who've suppressed these voices and not realizing that after every couple of years or every couple of tours of duty, there's this voice that comes to you to think about moving, what's the next stage? And we're like, no, we're
Mm,
already comfortable in this stage, on this path. And they suppress it only to regret it later on. So
mhm,
it is multiple times. It's not a linear path. Look at myself, oil and gas to like supply chain to like strategy consulting to talent, right?
mm,
And it's a portfolio. It's a variety of lives that we live. That's how life is was meant to be,
mhm.
and we live at a time when it's actually possible.
Right. And to add to that, that's the core definition of growth. Growth is that you progress and advance. And as kind of taking this like a little bit metaphysical and scientific, as us human beings are growing every day in terms of our, cellular, molecular phases. And just as, we are changing kind of physically, the idea of growth and change is something that I think about every, like it applies in the professional sense as well. And when we think about progress and innovation, the underlying thesis of that is tomorrow will be different than today. And so I think with that ethos, I really, I'm glad we're doing this topic and maybe to share a little bit about, with our audience around, my personal changes. And I'm going to pull on a thread that you mentioned earlier around, I really love that you shared, you're not only climbing the proverbial, corporate ladder, but you're most interested in, where is that ladder leaning? I think that's the idea one. And the idea two that I found inspiring as well is when you were mentioning about this disconnect between heart and mind. I certainly felt that, and I will abbreviate this story and maybe on a different time we can unpack it a little bit more because there were so many important lessons for me personally that I kind of bring into the workplace. But for the purposes of today, I will shorten it. So I'm an immigrant to this country, and I'm so inspired by that journey, but it was a very difficult journey for my family and I. But because of that journey and having survived it, I am filled with this great purpose and ambition around creating more opportunities, not just for myself and my family, but for others as well. There have been many others who would love to have immigrated to America or maybe other Western places to strive and to get meaningful work and to thrive in their own lives. And so I think for me, that's that journey, be it very difficult and also, leaving our country to come to this new country and literally starting over, is a great privilege. With that great kind of experience and privilege, I have always had this tension around purpose and value and literally working to make ends meet. And so, but I think in that construct, I had good enough advisors starting with my parents to say, hey, look, I need to build your skill sets, build a great network, and, and when needed, accept and take the hard jobs. And I think those kind of three thinking processes, like, I wanted to actually join a government entity and interview there. I think, I shared this story with you, Shujaat. I went into investment banking instead. It's very practical. One, build skill sets. Two, builds network. Three, it's a hard job, but I learned a ton and it opened the doors for many things. Nonetheless, I had this kind of discomfort between, growth and kind of, where my heart lies in terms of maybe doing more economic development work. I could be in the Peace Corps forever, or maybe be a PhD in economic development. So I think and I think I share that story of transitioning as an immigrant, making choices around specific kind of career decisions, and then separately, kind of following the thread of the story of after banking, I made a career transition into I actually joined the AmeriCorps, which is very different. which led me to make the decision around. I really love being in business. I love the impact, and candidly, it's just where I play well, and I really really love it. And I get tons of energy. And then and then making a transition into management consulting, and then transitioning into tech, and then transitioning as an entrepreneur. I mean, even this podcast itself is a whole new kind of skill set and transition. But I'll wrap up the story by kind of underscoring. There's this construct of the S curve of growth in business, where over time and growth parameters in business, there's the parameters or revenue, size of number of people, like your take of like the business pie. But in the personal sense, it's similar, and for me, that I think about it across those three constructs of over time we're always growing and changing and maturing into different phases of, particularly for myself, new skill sets, new network, and new opportunities. And and each one of those are hard, and each one of those are different. And so I'm going to wrap up my story there, and then kind of take it into a new question on the back of this story, which is, when we think about transitions. So we've established that, one, they're not linear. Two, they're on a continuum. And three, we almost need to expect it. So question for you, Shujaat, is, pick any of your transitions, or maybe where you are today. What is the most surprising to you, knowing what you know now as an accomplished leader, having done multiple successful transitions? What has been the most surprising?
Interesting question. Before I get to that, let me just make sure that I recap this, because you raised a very, very interesting point, which is about the discomfort. I think even if I look at my own story as well, right? Earlier, I came in as an immigrant to Canada and then to the US. Early in my career, I
So you're
was
a two-time immigrant.
professional immigrant, as I introduced. I, depending on where your politics is, I'm a professional immigrant. Earlier in the career, did not have I built all the foundations to meet have put bread on the table and go for discomfort in terms of, I said, okay, I don't have a lot of wealth, but my skill, my learning, my perspective will become my wealth. So there's different stages in your career, right, in life. And earlier on, wherever you can, as uncomfortable as you can make it for yourself for the right output, it will help you later on in life when you want to make even bigger transitions, because you have the resources for it. So earlier on, like you said, skills, perspectives, experiences that I built, that later on, when I had to take a financial risk, and I had a young family as well, shifting from management consulting to talent, I, like you said, AmeriCorps, had explored nonprofits and pro bono consulting and realized that that was not for me. And my ikigai was, for those who know, like that concept of ikigai, mine was in the talent, championing the marginalized. And I still need to do it in the corporate space, because I want to make money, but also see that this is where the biggest impact is, because we're spending so much time at work. But at that time, a mentor had told me that you need to gather FU money. You need to have capital gathered that says you are able to take care of your, finances, your family, and be able to walk away from money on the table so that you can go invest in yourself. And so I pursued discomfort intentionally so that I later on can get the comfort of making a transition. And that, so just keeping in mind the different stages, right? This is not just, you don't start from transition day one because you have privilege. You can figure out what that transition is within your constraints, and eventually you get to that point. But to your question about surprises, right? Let me, for our audience, establish this definition and some clarity between change and transition. And then I can talk about like the surprise, because this was a surprise for me as well in my transition. A major radical one that I did 7 years ago when I was shifting to talent helped me build the playbook, eventually synthesize the playbook for the transition I'm going through right now, is to realize that change is different from transition. Our economy, our businesses are designed for change, for constantly innovating, constantly doing more with less. An organization can put a new technology in, AI is coming in, that's a change. A business model can shift, or you as an individual feel like there's a disconnect between your heart and mind and what you want to do. And you feel like you're like, okay, the easiest thing is let me just shift a job and hopefully the next one will be better. That's a change. Transition is the process you go through it from one identity to another. And organizations, change management doesn't normally take care of the transition that people go through, when a change happens to them or they make a change. And transition has three aspects. There's an ending of a previous life. And before a new life or new identity can start, there's a middle period where you get lost. It's a limbo period. I think that was a major surprise for me. In my last year in consulting, I was, how consulting is, we're always like A-type personalities, high achievers. I was on a very fast track path and I was doing a lot. I was, wrapping up my executive MBA and I was like, on a path where, it's easy to just go make a lot of money within consulting or outside of consulting. But I certainly started to feel very disengaged. It was an existential crisis that I have the skills. I know how to get any work done, any project, any role that I was looking at. Just my mind doesn't want to do it. And I the chemistry is not coming in applying it. I know all steps to take. I just don't want to do it. And I felt as if I'd been lost. Maybe I'd been burnt out. I tried to figure out like what's happening. And that's when, thanks to this book and an executive coach, he helped me understand that, life isn't about you end something and the next thing begins. There's a reason why even as a Muslim, right, and other cultures as well, there's a rite of passage. When, someone passes away, there's few days of mourning. It is these rituals that you have to go through. And help me understand that actually this being lost is that you are now in a transitional state. You are want to saying goodbye to a previous identity. You don't know what the next identity is, but you now have to take again comfort in this discomfort of being lost. And that was a major surprise for me. And it actually opened me up more to listening to signals. I'll give this anecdote, right? We had these consulting dinners where partners would bring managers in, and normally these dinners you'd be connecting with everyone and networking with everyone. And that's how my personality is. That's how most consultants are. And I would sit at these dinners and would not want to talk. And I was like, what am I doing? Am I just am I on a self-destruction path? But that surprise saying that, no, this is a moment. This is your growth path. Observe yourself. Be an observer to your thoughts and feelings right now. And see, that was a surprise because what I then later learned, the transition from this middle being lost period to finally getting into what's your new identity that you go full throttle on, it's like a tipping point, right? Inflection point where it immediately happens. And when it happens, you're like, wow, that was easy. Surprise was that embracing being lost and exploring and discovering and being okay that you're disengaged, just keep reflecting. Once you go through that path, there was an ultimate high. Because when the light bulb opened up of like, wow, this is what I wanted to do. And this is where everything lines up for me. But everything was fuzzy. But if I had not gone through that process of being lost, I would not have come to this, realization without it. So that was a surprise that has helped me plan out the current transition that I'm going through very well. And I think this concept of it's okay to be lost. I just had my executive coach last night. I messaged us like, hey, how's it going? And I said, I'm putting up strategy for my new business, but a lot of it I'm stuck as well. And I sent with a smiley, I'm enjoying being lost. And he's like, I'm content where I am. And I'm actually enjoying being lost as well because something's telling me that you're not digging in deep enough for the purpose that you want to and what excites you. And she's like, bravo, that's where you need to be. Enjoy being lost.
Where do I pick up from that, Shujaat? There's so many wise things in there. Enjoy being lost. I resonate with that. I think that, the journey is the way, I think is that saying, or maybe that's just all sayings. I also wanted to pick up on a few points that you mentioned. Take comfort in discomfort. Was that a surprise that you had? Like, do you feel more comfortable being in a state of discomfort now?
I do. So I think this current transition, where I'd been thinking about how to, a year ago, like Dave Evans, for those who don't know, Dave Evans does this, and I forget his partner's name, but I'll put it in the show notes. It's how do you design a meaningful life? I went through that exercise a year ago for myself, and knowing my own playbook and understanding from transition, I was like, okay, I'm now putting myself into a transitional state.
Mm-hmm.
So I will have to realize that there'll be parts of this where I will get lost,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to be comfortable with it. And yeah, I think that had I not learned this 7 years ago, this realization, just knowing now it's table stakes, right? For me, that, yeah, I need to plan out that there'll be a process where I need to be lost. Do I have a window of opportunity where financially as well, I can afford being lost and exploring and not worrying about that I need to jump in and to do something right away,
Mm-hmm.
and just, keep exploring.
So learning to transition as a table stakes skills is one of the insights that I'm getting from our conversations today. And I'd like to kind of, maybe drill down a little bit on that. As you know, I work with other leaders and executives on their own career paths, sometimes in the form of that kind of their personal path, or maybe organizationally, like for their companies or for their teams. And a really interesting insight that I have found, particularly in this time of great uncertainty and economic change, and kind of new investments in artificial intelligence that kind of throws different leaders in to conversations around innovation in the future. And we've started to talk about this, of like change that happens to you and change that you that you incite as a person or as a leader. And an interesting observation that I have is that most people are surprised by change, even leaders at the top of their organizations. And why I find that particularly interesting is, so let's just juxtapose that with some data. The average C suite level executive, and these are average numbers, are generally in office for 4 to 6 years. Now, some we've seen, it could be 2. There's, and I follow the financial services banking space a lot. There's some that are being there for, 10 plus years, and others who have, like a 1 to 2 year cycle. And so, why is that important? I think that is important I think that the key insight there is, one, change happens also at the leadership level. 2, you almost have to expect it, given these types of data points. And 3, you should prepare for it, given that you know that information. And if I were a person who, or maybe you're not at that kind of senior director, VP and above level, I think the key takeaway is that, your team will change inevitably within the same cycle. Because I think a known fact, right, is when leadership changes, organizations change also.
And it's on that data point, you're right. Like the 10 years one is mostly, it's very iconic CEOs who try to hit that 10-year mark, but it's so poignant in that point, right?
Like our
Because
CEO love, Satya Nadella. Shout out to Satya.
right? You have been here from like LinkedIn 10 years, right?
Correct.
The
Mm-hmm.
icons like this. And you have a 4 to 6 year mark, tells you, right, that whether you're early in your career, let's say tech, right? In tech, early in your career, middle, normally what you get a 4-year vest and the 3 year is the cliff, or you have a 3-year vest, but generally the cliff is happening in the third year. And if you decide to do a longer tour of duty, it will be what, 6 to 7 years? But in that time, depending on when you join, there's a high likelihood that enough leadership changes, and along with it, a business shift, along with it, a different type of culture is going to happen. And
Correct.
if your identity was attached to that workplace and that role that you were doing, that identity is going to change without you realizing it, right?
Mhm.
But your attachment, you still hold on to it. So why this is like inevitable, that change is going to happen. And that's why I think it is important for individuals, for leaders, and for organizations to help these individuals understand that how do you put yourself into transitional state? How do you embrace, right? And I think there's two types of changes. One is the change happens to you, right? And one is the change that you design. And both have some common norms that I was talking earlier, right? Like of being lost, right? Being comfortable with the uncomfortable. But I think it is very important then to understand what is the playbook, whether the change happened to you or you're deciding to make a change, right? Given the data you just shared about 4 to 6 years, how do you embrace the change, right? How do you embrace transition during this change?
Well, I think the first thing from what you and I are just learning about, the cycle of leadership, is one to expect it. Expect that change will occur, and then let's go into the playbook. So let's
Right?
assume, like I think lesson number one, change will happen. And the one thing I want to add to that is what you were sharing earlier around, as companies grow and change, and leadership changes and culture changes, being stuck in an identity. From my experience, in consulting and also, in organizations, that inevitably most organizations want to grow. No organization or no company I have been in, irrespective of the size, wants to remain the same size. Every company wants to get bigger, bigger in their revenue, their value, the number of people in their organizations, the influence that they have in their industry. There is no company that wants to stay the same. So if that were the case, then, every company should expect change.
Absolutely. And so let me add to that. So I think let's cover our playbook on this. I think I was going to give an example. If you think about in sports, whether soccer or football for the rest of the world, if you look at some of the top coaches, teams, right? Look at other sports as well, right? American sports, cricket, my passion, that you always want to leave on a high. Whether you're a coach, you've made a very successful team, you're a captain, or you're a player who's like become a legend, you wanna, as soon as you've gone everything right and you're on a high, they really move away. Those who suffer don't want to stick on to it, right? So that's number one, is there's a transition or change happens when everything is working great for you. And sort of the transitions we talked about are in our own lives, right? We're doing great as a strategy consultant. Why would you want to make a shift? Who would go from corporate strategy to HR in my case?
Mm-hmm.
So number one, everything is fine. Try to make a transition. Number two, things are not fine. And sort of I was feeling, for example, like a disconnect, or you're feeling a disconnect from a mind and the heart. Or things you're realizing that the business is not doing well, you're reading the signs on the wall, you want to initiate a transition. And number three is something happens to you, the change has been made for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start like one by one, right? I think the first one is the most daunting one, because there's a fear of what will people say. People rate me based on where I work, what level I have, what I'm making. And now, if I make a shift and it doesn't seem rational to everyone the way they rate me for it, like, how do I answer to people, right?
So this goes in part to the idea of identity. When you are in a certain state, you have a certain identity,
Exactly. And I think
internally,
there's
externally, whatever is real and whatever is perceived.
what is perceived and how much value do you put into that, right? So I think that's the most difficult one for a lot of people to let go of, because I have also my experience, my learning, my spiritual belief as well is the moment you're trying to shift away, the world throws even more money at you. It tells you even more about the identity, and it's very difficult to get away from. So it's about you listening to that voice. So I'll start with this extreme case because then the rest become easier. My learning is that when you were asking me about surprise, my surprise of being lost helped me prepare now for even a bigger transition, because I know two questions I need to ask that I asked myself every year, even when things were going well and I was, felt like this is what I want to do. Number one, what is part of your past and present identity that you want to let go of because it is not aligning with your true north? So that's one
Mhm.
question, right? What is the part of your previous identity that you want to let go? And number two is, what is something waiting? You're on the stage of life. What is waiting as a new character to enter into your life, that
Mhm.
new identity into your life, waiting to come in, that helps you refuse you for what you want to do for your true north, right? I think those two questions, when you're asking, so if I take this case scenario where you are already in a perceived high value and status, and you feel like you want to let go, you're asking your questions, how much of this really adds to what I want to do? How
Mhm.
much of this identity really adds value to me? So, like Mary Kondo of life, how much does this add value to you, right?
Mhm.
And I think there where
Happiness.
you start thinking about values, right? What do I want to do? Where is the impact I want to create? Is it skills? Is it maybe even status? Like I'm stuck in a glass ceiling and I have sort of surrendered to this is how things are going to be. But then you realize, no, but that is because of the environment I'm in. I want a different identity, right? And then the second part of the identity is like, all right, so if you're leaving a lot of money on the table, generally you talk to a financial advisor. So I'm going to get into some tactics, right? You,
Mhm.
when you get to that point, first keep asking these two questions. And the best way to get clarity on these two questions is not just by talking to yourself, having informational conversations with others, stalking people's life journeys and seeing, someone's made this radical transition. I just want to understand why they went from a one identity to another. What was their journey from? Someone's going through a journey that is really where you want to do. Go ask them about it. And I remember I did it for 6 months. The last transition I did, I used to do 2 coffee chats per week, just generally curious about other people's journeys so that I can harness them and just understand. So that's number one, because it gives you clarity on these two questions about yourself when you're learning from what others have gone through. And you will realize everyone, whether they consciously recognize or not, they're asking these two questions.
Mhm.
So that's number one. And I'll share two more, right? So number one is this. And then number two, practically, there's a financial cost associated with it. Or if you think you're at a very high status role, you're like, okay, is the status there because I'm earning something and there's an earning potential? Highly advise you to work with a financial advisor and figure out, okay, there's always a window of opportunity where you can either let go of the income, or you can figure out how can I make that same income coming in either through my investments, either returns that I'm making, or I can find some other work that I can do as a freelancer or as a contractor. And how much money can I bring in that sustains me so that I can keep exploring? Because at first
Mhm.
you detach from this environment, right? Corporate world is hard, right? So you can't just be exploring while doing a job. You can do it in earlier stages in life, but as you go higher up, it becomes difficult, right? You have other commitments, you have family as well. And then the third is the secret sauce. I think we talked about it in one of our episodes when we talked about innovation. Just reminding again, number one, you're constantly figuring out the identity by talking to others as well. Number two,
Mhm.
you're doing your homework from a financial perspective, right? Number three is you are now job crafting. When you realize that there's a window of opportunity and when you can take this risk, you also know that, okay, but what if I don't take the risk? In my current job, do I have runway to do mini experiments and figure out through side projects? Can I figure out, test out different options for me for what I want to do and build them into my job or in my company and do that right now so that before I take that final jump where I have financial risk, I've already figured out I failed fast and succeeded fast as well, right? So mini experiments, thinking like a scientist. These are the three. And I think if you look at this, this works not only for when you're satisfied where you are and you decide to make a change,
Mm-hmm.
it's also for if you see the writing on the wall and figure like, the music is about to stop and you now need to make a change. I think it works in both those scenarios. And I'll take a break. We can talk about the third one when change happens to you. How does that work when the change happens to you and you were just surprised by it?
That's a brilliant framework. So to play that back, what you're sharing is there are three primary things around this part of our playbook, which is number one, identity. Me and on that, take stock, understand what's most important for you, learn from others. Number two, I'll call it like financial well-being. And part of taking risks is, well, look, I'll say it here. It's important for you and I to be financially, strategic. Maybe for others, they have greater risk tolerance, but the long and short of it is be financially smart for the scenarios that you will engage in. And number three, crafting. I love what you use, job crafting. I would say maybe your life crafting also. And because I think, again, like when I think about back to our mission and vision, why are we doing this podcast? Why do we spend so much time, meeting, sharing, producing? Part of it is, crafting a purposeful life. And this is important for us to share our experiences with others so that they, can take whatever is valuable. Hopefully, there's something valuable in it, and so that they can craft their own life as well. I think those are three very powerful, and it's a simple framework to for folks to follow in the playbook. I'll add a few things, which is I call it like the bees. So in this process, I think you were touching on it of this idea of experimenting. Is to be an Olympic learner and and know that in the state of change, you are also learning. Even in the state of this idea of being lost, you're learning that you are lost. Maybe you didn't even know you were lost, or maybe you didn't even know you were burned out. Maybe you didn't know you were uninspired. Those are three discoveries within the state of being lost. So the fourth one to the playbook is be an Olympic learner. And then the fifth one that I would add is be known for something. Be known for something. So I share that because in some of the conversations on transitions that I have today, particularly in areas where it was a change that was done to you, look, we're all human. If it was not our choice, we generally do not like it. And in that state of disarray and emotional, maybe psychological kind of feelings of losing an identity, what I find is that people generally forget the really great aspects of that identity. So for instance, if you were someone who, were in, let's take the example that you had, Shujaat. You went from, consulting into the talent space. And oftentimes in that kind of realm of, oh my gosh, I'm going through something like really new. I'm like the underdog here. I don't know a lot. But you already come with a lot, right? You already have a perspective around how a business is run. Actually having, seen many, many types of businesses, you may not know exactly that business, but you have a business perspective. You have run and manage teams. You have an expertise in the realm of, strategy, operating principles, and such. And so I want to underscore that in this periods of transitions, you are already bringing your past identities into your new ones. And the underscore really is don't forget that. Because in a state of disarray, we can then tend to say to ourselves, I suck.
And
Just to
you
put it
suck as
simply,
well.
right?
You suck as well. You did this to me. Yeah,
Just
yeah,
to put it simply, I
yeah.
am being very facetious, but just to, put a finer point on it is, you know, and again, these are in situations where perhaps some of our listeners out there, you're going through a transition and, not of your choice. And so what I say to you is it is a moment, it will pass, and you have all these skill sets and perspectives and experience, and you're going to embark on something new. You don't lose any of that. You do not lose your skill sets. You do not lose your network. You do not lose your expertise. In fact, you are going to build upon them. So, to framework, I like one word. So, identity, financial risk management, job and life crafting, Olympic learning, and be known for something.
So what you just touched, it so goes back to the first point as well. I think if you're constantly asking, so that first of all, every leader, everyone, every individual should always be using this framework at every point in time to be thinking about a transitional state. Not saying that everyone needs to be constantly be in transition, but this same framework helps them prepare to figure out like, yes, the compass is showing them where the true north is, but they have to go through the swamps to get to it as well. And like just constantly reflecting on them. So what you talked about, being known for something, I think also resonated with me on the first point of when you think about what is the current part of the identity, that identity is a result of multiple life transitions leading to it. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you're starting off your career, you don't realize it, but you are a product of multiple life transitions that led to that point. And those stick with you, there's goodness in them. So you don't just give those away. And in my case, when I was trying to shift from corporate strategy to the talent space, of course, everyone in my network is like, are you kidding me? Like, who does an MBA and then go try to disrupt HR? And when I was trying to even make the change, it was such a
No, no, no
very,
knock on the HR space. Just
no,
maybe,
no, no,
maybe it's an MBA insider joke. I don't know.
but, but, even the partners and consulting were like, what, you want to go into human capital consulting, HR metrics? And as I was exploring, very few opportunities existed. Very few companies existed who would believe in what I was trying to do in terms of people analytics. And in there, because if you don't know what's the part of your identity currently that holds value and holds assets, it's your assets to help you into the new identity. You will not actually be able to make a career transition, by the way. So
Mm-hmm.
for any of our listeners who are thinking about something happened to them and they're thinking about a career shift, or people who have taken a break and want to make a career shift, here's what happened to me then. I was going into very good paying, high level roles, but I realized in these roles, I was not being myself, right? And end of the day, companies may want someone to have an outsider perspective. They want to go for the safer candidate. They're like, oh, well, does this person have years under HR and blah, blah, blah. Where I took inventory was, okay, for what companies really want to disrupt and they know they're not going to get from conventional candidates is the ability to jump into an ambiguous business problem, apply data to it, convert that into insights, and then influence decision making strategically. That is mostly done in the business side, but not on the talent side. And I looked at that, I'm like, that's what I've done. I've built high performing teams. I've jumped into situations where I had no pedigree, but I used logical structuring to solve them. And then I converted data into insights to influence decision making. So I
Mm-hmm.
literally changed my strategy in my interviews. I would go to these interviews that were rare as they came. And the question where they ask you, so who are you? Why are you here? And I would start off with, I'm here to commit career sabotage. And then I would take a pause. And the interviewer would lean in, excuse me? What did you just say? I'm like, oh, I'm here to commit career sabotage. Here's why.
Mm-hmm.
I've had an experience as a strategy consultant. So again, remembering good parts of my identity and
Right.
what they mean. This is what I've done. I've built high performing teams, jumped into ambiguous situations, put logical structuring to it, then used data to convert them into insights to solve these problems, and then use them to influence executive decision making. Now, I do not have an HR background, but here's my passion. And I showed my commitment to what the work I had done on the side projects. Remember, again, experimenting. And here's my perspective based very unique to me that what we should be doing here. After that point, there was no question asked whether I come from HR or not. It was about this is what we hope, but we haven't been able to find anyone. And this
Mm-hmm.
person brings a proven track record because of their previous identity. Let's talk further, right? And then we went
Mm-hmm.
deeper and deeper and deeper into conversations. Not a single question asked, do you come from HR? The team that I built, who I am, right? And the irony is, few months later, once I got into that domain and I started doing the first few projects, the same companies who used to ask, hey, do you have HR background? Started reaching out to me. And apparently 3 months was now enough for them to be justified, right? So I think it is just playing this very tactfully that as you're this framework helps you think about not only when you're going through transition, but you should always be thinking about these 5 things, right? You should be thinking about your financial well-being. You think about financial literacy. You should be thinking about experimenting so that you can job and life craft all the time, right? Then be an Olympic player like that. I love the Olympic athlete. That's how you should be training yourself for. And then lastly, right, this part about being known for something, right? There's, if anyone who's watched Mad Men, which is, I think, a master class on branding, and right, uh,
Beautiful. Yeah.
there's an episode where, the person says to Don Draper, this is America, baby. You pick one thing and then you become the only one who does that thing. So you need to be known. And now we live in this world of social media and creators who are all about sub niches, right? Everyone's focusing on the not just niche, but a sub niche. And next thing will be the sub niche. Being known for something and be proud of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this helps you always. And then when you're executing, right, where you're closing the deal for a transition, if you've constantly been working around this framework, you will have the ammunition, the mind will click the right point, where when you're executing like I did, I then worked on my comms strategy. What is my pitch? How do I make a pitch that is unique? And if the resistance is because I don't bring the pedigree of HR, I was like, no, but I bring something else. And let me prove that and let me show that. I think that then helps you execute as you go through a transition. One thing I will add though is one of the things for that scenario where change happens to you and you want to quickly get into this framework so that you can figure out how much runway you have, what's your identity, where do you want to go. It's an opportunity for you to do something rather than reactively jumping in to do something. One thing I will say is whether you were planning the transition and something happened to you, right? Or something came in as a surprise and you now are being put into this state. This is something I learned from a few others. Immediately let go and give yourself space to let go of any toxicity you have about who did the change to you. Because if you were thinking you were known for something, you were building a new identity, you were building financial literacy and well-being for it, you were experimenting. Imagine you're in a sports team and you were planning that the game is about to end. You're in the last minute and the coach is not putting you into the game. And you're like, I've been building everything up for it. I just need this opportunity. And then now coach says, last minute, go in. You should not be worried about, hey, do I need to prove the bench wrong that I kept on saying the entire game put me in and now I need to prove them wrong? No. You have this 1 minute, you have this opportunity to now play the game how you want to, which is your identity, your unique life and career design. Go for it, all in, go even bold.
Shujat, all very great observations. Again, so wise that your play your game is so simple, so brilliant, and I think a really valuable takeaway. On that note, I want to move us to recap our observations and our learnings today. There's so many, But I want to kind of keep it to three for our audience. The first one is that, look, change and transition are constant and you should expect them. Number two, we introduced a framework around transitions, which is where you have an ending, whether it's an identity or a situation, and then you have this neutral zone of understanding the situation and then the new beginning. So understanding that and recognizing that there are these three phases is very powerful. And the third one is the playbook that we've shared with you that works whether you are intentionally making a transition or a situation has happened to you. And that framework being number one, your identity, taking the good parts of it and what you'd like to shift to the next phase. Number two, financial well being. Number three, crafting your own life and your next role and job. Number four, being an Olympic learner and forever curious will take you far. And then lastly, number five, be known for something. Shujaat, what would you like to add to that as we wrap up?
Transition is such an ocean. You can dive deeper and deeper and deeper into it. I think this is a playbook that's worked for me, worked for you, not just from a career perspective, but from a life transition perspective as well. And again, I will quote Rumi again and say, don't go with the flow, be the flow. And, you see this painting behind me for those who are watching on video. It's a homage to Rumi Sufism, but also to my favorite book, Alchemist. So I think it is, you have to figure out your personal legend, but you have to go through that uncomfort so you can get to realize your personal legend. And that's key.
Beautiful. Be comfortable with discomfort. I feel like we almost have to quote Rumi every time now.
Yes.
So I'm also a big Rumi fan. And I actually found my Rumi book. I was going to mention it to you. So I'm now mentioning it to you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. This is one that, resonates with both of us so much. And thank you for sharing with us what's top of mind for you. And giving us the opportunity and the space. And again, thank you for listening to this episode of Here's the Deal. Please follow us and turn on those notifications so you do not miss an episode. And if you love it, please share with a friend and your family members, colleagues. It's really important that we also do this for the metrics of the show and to kind of keep us going on the top of the list on your favorite podcast. Thank you for the feedback. We're getting great feedback on the show. We so appreciate it. And if you like it and love it, please leave us a 5-star review. It helps us with the algorithm and to get recommended to the right people so that we can continue to help you and many more others craft purposeful lives and reach their highest potential. On that, till next time.
Till next time.